I think we can do that. All right, we're a little bit late today. We are doing a little different format. I'd like to welcome those who are joining us online now, and Pastor Francis will bring the message of the hour, and it won't be an hour, but welcome, and I'm so glad you're joining us today.
Is it going to be a problem if I stand there? Me on the camera, right? So I better stay here. It's okay? All right. I was in a grocery store about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and I was taking someone to the grocery store, and then they did their shopping, and when they came back, they realized that they had forgotten to purchase something else, so they went back, and I said, I'm just going to wait for you here, because I hate shopping for anything. So I waited for him, but then I noticed that there was a gentleman that was sitting on a bench. This was in Walmart. And he was waiting on the bench, and he had his son with him, probably around your age, maybe a little younger than you. And his son had an ice cream cone, and there was more ice cream on his face than there was on in the cone. And the father was sitting there, and I could tell that the father looked really tired. And so I sat down, and I started talking with him, because that's what I do. I just love to talk and get to know people. And so I started talking with him. I realized that he was from Costa Rica, and he barely spoke any English. He had only been to Canada for about the last 6 months. He was an immigrant who had come with his family. And I said, so how is it going? He says, oh, I'm really tired. I said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. You know, are you working? And so he said he had work. And he looked at his son, and he said, you know, this is why I'm tired. And so I said, okay, I can imagine. He looks pretty active and things. And then he started sharing a little bit with me the town he comes from, and how he enjoys Saskatoon and all these different things. And then all of a sudden I see a woman come by, and she had 3 children with her. And lo and behold, she was his wife. So he had 4 children. So he doesn't have you beat, but you know, he's getting there. And now I understood really quickly why he was tired. I mean, these children were between the ages of 1 and 6, with the little boy being 6. And then the children also had ice cream cones, and the ice cream cone was all over their hair, and that kind of stuff. Just ugh. I like everything to be clean, and so we chatted a little bit. And when his wife came, he had to go, and I just said, you know, I wish you the best. And if there's anything I can do, I gave him my card. You know, if there's anything I can do to help, you know, let me know. You know, and that was it. I've never heard from him again. Here's one thing about Jesus that I appreciate, and it's hard sometimes to notice this about Jesus because the Bible is somewhat matter of fact about the stories and about the events. It doesn't tell us that Jesus smiled or that Jesus hugged someone, even though I'm pretty sure Jesus did. It just doesn't really share a lot of that. But here's what I think. Based on what I read in the stories, I think Jesus always made a very positive impression on anyone he met. Now, that may not necessarily mean that he's always telling, oh, you're beautiful and you're kind. Sometimes making an impression may be to convince someone that maybe the direction they're going may not be the best direction. Much like the rich young ruler that you mentioned earlier. You're keeping all the commandments, but go and sell what you have and follow me. That was a loving statement that was hard. That would have been hard. And so I'd like to draw 3 lessons from the story that we just spent some time looking at on how to be friendly. And the reason why I think it's important is some of you may be familiar with the direction that our conference is going. Last year was a community outreach. This year is friendship evangelism, and so on and so forth. And the reason why it goes in that order is because the idea for this year is to plant a seed. It's based on agricultural terms. So preparing the soil last year, planting a seed. And the reason why I think it's important for us to understand what that means is because I think some of us plant trees instead of planting seeds. Does anybody have an idea of what I mean when I say that? What do you think, Michelle? Planting trees in people's lives instead of planting seeds. What are you eating there, sir? I think there's cheese in that. That's planting a tree. Oh, you go to that church? Did you know that according to the Bible, you're worshiping the devil? That's planting a tree in someone's life. So, how did Jesus do it?
I don't know.
Oh, you're about to know. We're going to share that together.
Why?
Because I love you, man. Because I love you. And I love everyone here. And so we see here in our story that Jesus engages. When in the Bible it says in verse 5 that Jesus looked up and saw him. Now I cheat a little bit because I'm able to go back to the original writings and be able to look at what that word actually means. And so I go to the Greek sometimes, and I don't like to do that a lot, but this time I just felt like I needed to go look at this word. And the word there that says Jesus looked up and saw him actually means to see somebody for the first time. And so when we talk about seeing somebody for the first time, it means that there's no prejudice, there's no preconceived idea, there's no history. We're simply looking at someone for who they are. Jesus looked at Zacchaeus for the first time. Do you think, in your humble opinion, based on reading the story together, that anybody looked at Zacchaeus as if they saw him for the first time?
No.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I believe that he was getting looks. What kind of looks? I was driving to Pine House Drive, the 70 Adventist Church in Saskatoon, to preach this exact sermon in January. As I'm driving there, I've got my sermon in my heart. And I see as I'm driving there, there's a car that's parked by the side of the road, and there's two elderly ladies in the car, and they seem troubled. And I'm thinking to myself, friendship evangelism. Let me stop and roll down my window and see if they need help. And so I rolled down my window, and then she rolled down her window, and she looked at me, and I said, "Are you okay? I noticed you parked on the side of the road, and your hazards are on. Is there anything I can do to help?" And in my mind, I'm thinking, and she goes, "Oh, no, I'm just answering a call, and we're not supposed to talk on our cell phone while we're driving." I said, "Okay. You're good." She goes, "Yes, we're fine, young man. Thank you so much for stopping by." And so I rolled up my window, she rolled up her window, and I thought, I'm the man. I just practiced friendship evangelism. Just maybe 5 minutes down the road, I was almost at Pine House Drive. And as I'm stopping at a red light, there's a car that comes right by me and stops at a red light. And in that car were two goth people. They were all dressed in black, black makeup, and they were both on their cell phones while stopped at the red light. And all of a sudden, friendship evangelism out the window. Because I looked at them, and I looked at them as if they were just evil. First of all, why are you texting? You're driving. Because I've never done that. Right? And then I'm looking at the way they're dressed and all the stuff that's on. They had more pierced body parts that were pierced than a bull. I don't know if that's an expression here, but maybe it should be one. And in my mind, I started looking at them and I started making judgments just in my heart. I did not feel drawn to them as much as I felt drawn to those two helpless ladies who didn't need my help. And I started to reflect to myself, Francis, you just lost an opportunity, because do you know that in just a look, we say 1,000 words. Just the way we look at people. Because when Jesus looked up and saw Zacchaeus, he looked at him as if he saw him for the first time. You know, that's a compliment that my wife gave me a little while ago, and I was so tickled. She goes, Francis, when you look at me as if you see me for the first time. It was a wonderful evening, that evening. Jesus saw Zacchaeus for the first time. Do we notice the people around us? And our friendships based on commonality that we have with people? Or are they based on the needs that people have around us? I agree with you. I agree with you. Do you ever ask, I go to the gym sometimes, and I often ask myself as I'm doing my stuff, I wonder what this guy's story is. I wonder what this woman's going through right now in her life. I love to go to the mall and sit down and just watch people walk and see how parents and their children interact, how people interact. Some are going real fast, talking on the phone. Some are looking at windows, and some of them are barely walking. I always wonder, what are people's stories? Are you ever interested in knowing people's stories? Wow, it's so enriching. One year in my church, I did an 8-sermon series where I interviewed some of my church members about their life stories, one of which escaped Laos in a canoe with 5 other people, and he's the only one who wasn't shot. He arrived on the other side of the river, the only one alive, and all 4 of his friends were dead. And from that moment on, he knew. He committed his life to God. And the story he shared after that, him coming to Canada, him living in Canada, making a living in Canada, was an absolute faith story. But nobody knew that about him in the church. Because we're not interested in each other's stories. It's nice to try to understand people's lives, because a lot of times we may reserve judgment if we know where people have been and where people are trying to go. And we may be able to help. And they may be able to help us. For that man enriched my life. He barely spoke English. He worked in a laundry room in a hospital for 35 years, being infected by the soaps that were being used. He was having issues in his life, but yet he was praising God. And his daughter, who to this day is she was one of my youth that is still close. And I married her. I did the baptism for her 2 children. And she loves the Lord because of these wonderful parents who always sit in the corner of the church and never say a word. Get to know people's stories. See people for the first time.
Yeah.
It's incredibly valuable for your walk with God. Now, we know because in verse 7, it tells us how people reacted to Jesus, right? People said, they murmured, he's going in a sinner's house. There must be something wrong with him. And did Jesus care? Jesus was walking. It says that there was a crowd around him. But he didn't care about public opinion. He didn't care about what Judaism thought. Jesus cares about people, any kind of people. Jews, cripples, foreigners, sinners, prostitutes, Gentiles, women, children. He treated them all the same. And at that moment, I can just imagine, at that moment, it's as if it was just him and Zacchaeus. And there was crowds all around him. Just him and Zacchaeus. Because all of a sudden, Zacchaeus hears Jesus talking to him. And I think, for the first time in his life, I think Zacchaeus is seen. I want to go eat at your house. I use this verse a lot when I was beginning as a pastor. I use this verse a lot to invite myself to people's homes. And my wife used to hate that. She says, don't invite yourself. There's certain cultures where you can go to their homes and they'll always welcome you. It's not the Canadian culture. It's not the way it works in Canadian culture. You don't just show up. You actually call and you book a week ahead of time. Can I come on Wednesday afternoon from 2 to 3 o'clock and I'll leave by 3? I promise. Right? I mean, you guys who are from Canada, you know what I'm talking about. Right? But there's other cultures who, pastors, show up anytime. You can show up anytime. And so this verse is something that I used, but it didn't work. It didn't work. It's interesting too. I'm a people person. I love to hug. I love to hear stories. And I found, as I've been here for 2 years now, and people associate me with the conference. They don't know me as Francis. They just know me as somebody who works at the conference. That's not who I am. I'm Francis. And ask me about my story. I'll be happy to tell you. Because I'm not the conference. I'm Francis. I work at the conference, and I accepted that call 2 years ago. I still don't know why. But I accepted that call because God has something to teach me. And that story is a story that I would be happy to share with anybody who wants to know. But I miss this so much. I miss being a pastor of a church and getting into my members' lives and my members getting into my lives. That is life to me. And that's why I'm trying to remember some of your name. Your name is Emily, correct? Yes. I love your outfit. You look like English. It's very, very posh. And Mishael, I got to know a couple of weeks ago when he came to the workers' meetings, and he told me that he had an orchestra at the church. I didn't realize it would be that good. You guys are amazing. It was wonderful to hear all the wind instruments. Do we have a violin? Not here today? String? You have strings? You guys are blessed. This is wonderful. I'm so blessed to be here. And I got to know Danielle when I came here some about a year ago, and I see that your family is growing, and the stories that he has to share. It's an absolute blessing to be here today. But I am Francis. I'm not the secretary of the conference, and if you want to get to know me, I'd be happy to share about my life too. Number 2. So, number 1, see people. See them for the first time. Withhold your judgment. Get to the heart before you look on the outside. Number 2, entourage. Now, Head Elder Dean, I'm going to have to quote you on what you shared in Sabbath school earlier. Entourage means, it's a French word, entourage, which means to surround. Right, Brother Voisin? That's a French last name. It means neighbor. His last name means neighbor, which means he's friendly with everyone, right? Or you build fences. One of the two. I'm not sure which one you do. The first one, good. Good. Entourage means to surround. It means the people that you surround yourself with. Right? That's what an entourage is. What kind of entourage did Jesus have? Tell me. Okay, what do you mean by that? Were fishermen rough people? They were called sons of, not for, right? Fishermen. What else? A tax collector. Now think about that for a minute. What was Zacchaeus' job? Think about this. Yes? If Matthew is good enough for Jesus, maybe I can be too. When Jesus heals a prostitute, what does that say to all the other prostitutes out there? Not when he heals her, but when he is healing her emotionally, right? What does that say to all the rest of the prostitutes? When he chased the publicans and the scribes and out of the temple, all the people who were selling things, and then all of a sudden Jesus was surrounded by who? The poor people, the people who couldn't afford to buy a dove to come, and they came. What did he do? Who is he surrounding himself with? I can just imagine Zacchaeus saying, you know what? I trained Matthew because I'm the chief tax collector. And I trained him. And something happened to him. And something's happening to me. And I don't know what it is, but I gotta see this guy. And if Matthew's good enough, because I know Matthew, I know how nasty he is. I know he steals just like I do, because I taught him how to do it. Now, I can't prove this, okay? The spirit of prophecy and the Bible doesn't say what I'm saying. I'm just extrapolating here that Zacchaeus could have thought that he has a place next to Jesus because another tax collector does. Now, here's something else that's very interesting. There's a book called Desire of Ages. Some of you may know that book. If you don't, I would really recommend you read it. It's an excellent book. And also commentaries tell us that Zacchaeus heard the sermons of John the Baptist. Think about that for a minute. What kind of sermons did John the Baptist have? Repent and be baptized. And then they would ask him, well, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? And what did he tell the Roman soldiers? Don't steal. Give back. And Zacchaeus is sitting there in the corner listening to this, thinking to himself, I'm really no better than these Roman soldiers. I take money. I usurp money out of people. I bribe people. And it tells us that Zacchaeus' heart had already been convicted. But check this out. He had no one to go to. Why? Because he was getting the looks. His heart had already been moved. I can't live this way. Just like you said, brother, he had a hole, and he knew he had a hole, and he wanted to do something about it, but nobody would hear him. Nobody would help him. Nobody cared about his story. All they knew is that he was a traitor. That's all they knew, and that's all they cared about. And so even though his heart had been convicted, he had no place to find help. He had no one to lead him spiritually to redemption, to salvation, and to freedom. Can people come to you? Can people come to us? I was changing on the way here because I don't drive with this on. I stopped at the Tim Hortons and I went into the bathroom to change. In there was a man who smelled really, really bad. And he had basically, I think, his whole life in a bag. And he was in the bathroom. I saw the bag. He was on the toilet. And I was just putting on my shirt and my fancy coat going to church. And all of a sudden he comes out. And I just wanted to hug him. Now, I think that probably would be seen as sexual assault, to hug another man in a bathroom. So I didn't want to do that, but I'm going to hug you, okay, if I can, whenever you go. Because actually I can't because I'm sick, so I shouldn't hug you. That's horrible. And I just looked at him and I said, can I help you with anything? And he said, no, I'm okay. But I just couldn't walk out of that bathroom with at least offering something. And sometimes maybe he was too proud. I don't know. I don't know him, and I can't start sharing stories in the bathroom, and I was late to come here, so I didn't want to be too late. But what do we do with the people around us? Do we even give them the time of day? Are we too much in a rush? It was, they say, tell me who you hang around with, and I'll tell you who you are. I disagree with that. I think this is how God says it. God says, tell me who you hang around with, and I'll tell you if you understand my mission. Now, I agree with you, Dean, that if we hang around with a riffraff, we may become a riffraff. So we got to be mindful. There was a pastor one time who decided that he would witness to the prostitutes in Brooklyn. He never came back. So you got to know your weaknesses. You got to know, right? So you got to be very, very careful, very mindful. But nonetheless, we have, if you only hang around with 70 Adventists, who are you going to reach? What are you telling to the rest of the people around you? If you only hang around with people who speak your language, if you only hang around with people who look like you, what are you telling to the rest of the people around you? Well, if you don't look like me, you don't belong. And so, I think it's very important that we consider who we hang around with, because it tells the rest of the world who can hang around you. Jesus allowed people to be around him that other Jewish people did not allow to hang around him. He healed Gentiles. He helped a Roman soldier son. What does that say to the Jewish people around him? What does that say to his disciples? So that's step number 2 to friendship evangelism. What's step number 3? Pretty simple. Show an interest. Show an interest. Zacchaeus, hurry up and come down, because I'm about to eat supper with you. That's pretty personal. I have done canvassing. For those of you who don't know what that means, it's selling books door to door. Probably the hardest job in the world. My dad did it for 13 years in Quebec. And I did it in Toronto. And I can tell you, there were some people who I would knock on the door, and they would say, won't you come in? And next thing you know, I'm having supper with these people. There was a Jewish family who had me for supper. You know? And I ate with them, and they didn't buy any books. They weren't interested in my books, but they were interested in being friendly, so that I'll never forget that experience. I'll never forget that family took me in because they said, you've been walking all day, you must be hungry, why don't you come in? Of course, I'm going to go in because I'm hoping to sell some books. But really, in the end of the day, they were trying to help me. They had, when somebody comes knocking at your door, what do? Man, most people, they just shut the door, right? But I've been there. So I always tell people, would you like a drink? Would you like something? Because I know, I feel sorry for them. I know what it's like. I walked the streets of Toronto for 7 weeks, going door to door, meeting all kinds of people. And so, show an interest. As a matter of fact, here's a true story. There was a girl, a Filipino girl, who sold books with us, and she didn't sell a book for 7 weeks. Unbelievable. I mean, I would go with her, and I would go with her because I became a leader of a team. But she kept asking people to pray. She kept pushing the Bible on people, and I said, sometimes you just got to walk away and go to the next door. But needless to say, she kept wanting to pray, and after a while, I just say, no. The last week that we did canvassing, she knocked on the door of another Jewish family. And I wasn't with her, but I was watching, because I always watch, because my girls, I want to make sure they're safe. They're on the streets, and so they usually go 2 by 2. She was alone this time. She walked into the house. So now I'm like, Maria, we had our little, are you okay? Everything okay? Right? She goes in there. She's in there for like 2 hours. And I said, it must be a supper experience again. of some sort. And so, needless to say, she tells me, everything's okay, I'll be out soon. And she comes out with the biggest smile on her face. I've never seen her being so happy. And the Jewish family did not buy her books, but they gave her 4 years of scholarship for School of Medicine. She didn't sell a book, but she was faithful. She went to the doors and she offered books to people. She offered prayers to people. She didn't sell. And I thought, your tactics are wrong. You're pushing. And maybe she would have sold some books if she wasn't so aggressive with praying and Bible stuff. Nonetheless, 4 years of medical education paid by this Jewish family. Faithfulness. And so, show interest in people. Now, if you can, pay for people's education if you're able to, but show interest in people. I'm going to go and have supper with you. Now, you think about this. Look at the dynamics. Everybody who was around Jesus wanted something from him. They all wanted something, whether it was healing, whether it was just for his shadow to go over them, just to hear something. But it tells us in the Bible that Zacchaeus just wanted to see him. He didn't want anything from Jesus. He just wanted to see him. Imagine in your morning devotionals, when you're reading the Bible, where you're singing a little song to the Lord, let that be a time where you just want to see him. Not just a time that you're going to get something from him. Jesus was surrounded with people who wanted something from him, but there was one guy at the end of the day who was blessed. Which one? The one who wanted to see him. Because he had heard about him, he had heard John preach, and he wanted to see Jesus. It is my prayer that you and I get to a place where we see Jesus. We see Jesus through the scope of prophecy. We see Jesus through the scope of good behavior. We see Jesus through the scope of obedience. That we see Jesus. There's a saying that has touched me so much. It's from Alan Walsh, and he says, the best thing that we can give to people is not truth, not prophecy, not knowledge, but the fruit of our time alone with God. That's the best thing we can give to people. The fruit of our time alone with God. If we don't spend time alone with God, we don't have a lot to give. We may give a video, listen to this video, watch this guy, watch this woman, listen to this. But are we really doing justice to the cause of God? Now here's something that's going to make you laugh. I want to close with this. Do you know what Zacchaeus means? The name Zacchaeus means clean and innocent. I know. Now, do you think, Brother Daniel, that when the parents named their child Zacchaeus, they had intentions for him? They named him clean and innocent. Can you imagine people pointing back that at him? You are chief tax collector and your name is Zacchaeus? But you see, Jesus saw the potential in this individual. Just like he sees potential in you. And he sees potential in every person around you in PA. I'm amazed as I drove through the city again how big it is. This is not a small town. Oh, no comments. I drove through all kinds of towns on the way here. And if I blink, I'll miss the houses in some of them, right? But this is a nice town, and there's people around here who need you, who need to see Jesus through you. I know that there's a person for each one of you that you can touch, and you can fill that hole they have. And believe it or not, you can do it with the power of God. Because you have a story of salvation too. You have been saved too. And you have been lifted by Christ too. So clean and innocent. And when Jesus looked at him, I think for the first time in his life, he believed he could be free. And it says in the Bible that he claimed him as one of the sons of Abraham. Do you know what that means? You belong. You are a child of God too. Even though everybody else around here is telling you the opposite, I don't see you that way. Today, salvation has come to this home. And Zacchaeus is clean and innocent. Amen.
There we go. Let's stand as we sing our closing song, Seeking the Lost. It's an amazing song. We need more people up here with that can sing different parts. You can sing? Awesome. I'm going to grab, not the white one, this one's been acting up, so. You want to sing?
Oh, nice.
There's the red one over there too.
Yeah, this one's working.
Somebody else want to come up here? You're welcome to.
I don't want to get too close. I don't want to get too
No,
sick,
no,
so.
no. It's okay.
Seeking the lost, yes, kindly entreating wanderers on the mountain astray. Come unto me, his message repeating, words of the Master speaking today. Going afar, upon the mountain, bringing the wanderer back again, into the fold of my Redeemer, Jesus the Lamb, for sinners slain. Seeking the lost and pointing to Jesus, souls that are weak and hearts that are strong, leading them forth in ways of salvation, showing the path to life evermore. Going afar, upon the mountain, bringing the wanderers back again, into the fold of my Redeemer, Jesus the Lamb, for sinners slain. Thus I will go on missions of mercy, following Christ from day unto day, cheering the fainted, raising the fallen, pointing the lost to Jesus the way. Going afar, upon the mountain, seeking the daughter back
What's
again into the
Okay.
fold
Into
of my
of
Redeemer.
my Redeemer.
Jesus the Lamb for sinners
slain, for sinners slain. One more time from the chorus. Going afar, going
upon the
afar,
mountain,
upon the mountain,
bringing the
wanders
wanderers back again, into the fold of my Redeemer, Jesus the Lamb for sinners slain,
for sinners slain. Thank you, and you can have the benediction now.
Heavenly Father, what a beautiful story. It seems like every encounter in the Bible teaches us new lessons about how to reach those who have either left or those who still haven't found hope in you. We want to thank you, Father, for every person who's here and those who may not be here today for whatever reason. And I pray for all of the city of Prince Albert, all of its people here, Father. Some are searching, some have been convicted, and are looking for people to love them into your arms. I pray that you will give one person to each person here, that they will reach out to and to show your love. That one, they will look at them as if they've been seen for the first time. Secondly, that they will not be ashamed to have them around them. And number 3, that they will show an interest in their lives. Thank you for this privilege you've given us. One day, we're going to be in heaven with you. We will no longer need to do friendship evangelism. We'll just do friendship. And we'll continue to live that way for the rest of our lives. But Father, I want to bring as many people as I can with me. And I just pray that you will give us those divine appointments. And at the Prince Albert Church, we'll be so friendly that people will talk about it and say, you got to go there. Because these people are helped me on my journey. Let it be said of Prince Albert and of all of our churches across this beautiful conference. In your name I pray. Amen.